and help people understand why and how stomach acid might be a super important part and very valuable part of our overall health.
That's so cool. It's a good one to make simple, I know, because there's a lot of information out there on the market. There's a lot of things that seem to be go-tos, and taking it down to the source can sometimes change that.
Yeah, so we'll do the best we can as usual to just make things simple. With that being said, I guess I'll start by just kind of saying thank you and inviting everyone to again join us this evening. Awesome. Thanks for being here. Thanks for coming back. The goal is to make health simple. And tonight's a perfect example where we're going to talk about stomach acids. And more often than not, including the day today that I worked, we talked about stomach acids in the office that, hey, doc, yeah, my stomach acid is too high and I'm taking some medications for this. Or I had, went to my doctor's last year and they put me on stomach acids. Can I still be on them this year? So we'll talk about all that tonight and really make it simple and try to just map out how important the stomach acids are. So thank you everyone for being here. Keep doing your thing. Keep sharing it out. Keep spreading the love. We appreciate that you're here. And the podcast grows by you sharing it. So everything you can do to keep sharing it out, we will continue to do our best. In fact, if you have topics that you'd like us to cover or even guests that you'd like us to bring on, send them our way. If we can do that, we will.
Always love your input, my friends. Bart, shall we start this evening with a clinical insight? I know you were in clinic today.
Yes, I do have one clinical insight. It's a little bit of a kind of a different type of one. Yet I want to share it because it comes up often. It's not the best topic in the world to me, but it's real. So I want to bring it up. So this happened just last week. It wasn't actually today, but I didn't get a chance to bring it up last week. It happened on Friday. And I had a young gentleman that came in to come get adjusted. And it was his second time in. And usually if someone comes back for a second time, I'll ask them, have any questions about anything we talked about, anything that we did, and give me a little update. What have you noticed since we last adjusted? So we go through that dialogue and he goes on to tell me literally never felt better. His neck is moving better. He feels like he's sleeping a little deeper. This is just one adjustment, just one visit. Then he goes on and tell me as he's lying down, he goes back, he kind of turns his head up and says, hey, doc, do you mind not adjusting my neck today? My aunt, I think he says aunt or sister or cousin, something like that, said, it's okay that I go to chiropractor, just don't let him adjust my neck.
Right, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so it is interesting and it happened. So I want to have that dialogue in an open conversation, or I guess it's open between you and I and everyone else can listen for the most part. So this happened. So my first question to him was, what kind of doctor is your friend, cousin, aunt? I forget which one he said. And he said, I don't know. And I said, so they're not a chiropractor. And he said, yeah, I'm certain they're not a chiropractor. I just don't know what kind of doctor they are. And I said, well, how do you feel about that? You just got done telling me that you felt awesome after your first adjustment. And he said, he was kind of chuckling. He's like, I know it sounds stupid. I felt fantastic. And that's what I told her. And he said, well, you just have to be careful. And that's the part I want to bring up. And I say that because I do believe we should be careful in life, especially when we are choosing to do something to our bodies, to our health. And I think that goes across the board. So I want to bring up a couple of interesting things to help anyone that's on the fence there thinking, man, I think I want to go to a chiropractor. Sometimes I'm a little scared. I'll start by saying this. Chiropractic is probably the single safest, it's not even probably, it is the single safest healthcare profession in the world. It is. How do I know that? Usually just go by how many deaths are caused by direct deaths. Right now, the direct cause by chiropractic, specifically by chiropractic adjustments, is zero. There are some offset related things, kind of correlative things, but it's zero. That is unheard of. That's almost unfathomable. Now, I do think that we need to be careful. So I want to put that in light of some other things. So for example, if you do an elective surgery this year, elective surgery, I was in a car accident and I had to get a surgery. There's going to be over 100,000 people that die of elective surgeries. That's an issue. Just medications this year, we're going to have 50 people die per year of taking things like aspirin a day, every single day. So I do agree 100%. We should be careful, but we should also know that what we're doing, what things are we doing? Are they manipulating our innate wisdom and our innate abilities to be healthy, or are they supporting our bodies to express themselves at their God's given talents. And I think that's where a big line needs to be drawn. And I know that over the years, a lot of old school, and I'm going to say it this way, old school people in the healthcare profession are kind of weary about chiropractic. That's old school. It's not that way anymore. Myself and men and women like myself, we work hand in hand with other healthcare practitioners that work hand in hand with us. And the cool thing is, it is the consumer that's driving it. Today's consumer, the people listening to this podcast, you're smart. You want your doctor to have a great referral with their chiropractor. You want their doctor to have a great referral with their medical doctor. And I think that's the future. For anyone that's kind of ruling one or the other out, I think it's unfortunate. And I think it usually is because of a lack of knowledge and a lack of experience. So I don't knock anyone for being cautious and to ask the right questions. I love when people ask me questions. Say, Doc, is it going to be safe? Say, yes, I haven't broken anything in weeks. And they usually get it. So in that being said, so kind of an odd clinical insight, yet letting us know there's a lot of things I do think we should be cautious of. Tonight, I'm going to talk about what happens when we take stomach acid medications, right? I wrote down here some statistics, and I don't really like them because Google can give you anything you're looking for, I guess, right? But bike riding, right? We should probably be safe doing that, but over 1,200 people a year die from bike riding. I wouldn't tell anyone not to ride a bike.
No.
Yeah. And some people say, well, there's not that many chiropractic adjustments. On the contrary, there's over 1 million adjustments delivered a day.
I mean, there's 1 million adjustments delivered a day, like just people.
1 million Americans are getting adjusted every single day.
That's so cool.
Yeah, super cool. So it's not like a small percentage. It's a massive number that it's working with that gives us the validity to say this is the safest healthcare profession in the world, which is pretty cool. So shout out to all my colleagues out there. Elective surgeries, I told you, over 100,000. And what was the other statistic I thought was pretty crazy here? Yeah.
Something about skateboarding.
Yeah, skateboarding, at least 40 or 50 people a year die. So there's just crazy ways that people die. Chiropractic is not one of them. That's so, and I want to share with people just a little safety there, but I do think there should be caution. You know, there's medical errors are the second leading cause of death in the United States. There's over 250,000 people a year that die from medical errors. And again, not bad men or women. In fact, there's some of the most brilliant men and women that are practicing healthcare. The challenge is the tools that we're using right now are getting riskier and riskier. And that's it, folks. So if there should be caution, there should be caution to especially drugs that you put into your body. Of course, surgeries, we know those are risky. So just to bring it up, and in case anyone's on the fence here, today I had a whole bunch of new people in the clinic that have never been adjusted before. And it's so fascinating to me how the precursors, it's because I had some kids in there, and how the parents talk about it, or how the other people that are telling the parents to, or inviting them to come to our office. It's so interesting how things are just set up. If someone says, oh my God, you're going to love it, they usually go in having an expectation they're going to love it. If someone else says, well, be careful, it just sets up a different stage. So with that being said, I thought I would at least bring it up here tonight. It is a conversation that happens. And if you are one of those people on the receiving end, if someone says out there, well, you got to be careful. No, you don't. That's my job. It's the chiropractor's job. My job to be careful for you. And then your job is to make sure that things you're involving yourself with, that the risk factors are very low. And I will tell you, chiropractic, they're about as low as they get.
That's so beautiful, Bart. And I really think that as we, the general public, get more savvy about our health, it increases our agency, like the options that we have at hand. And I know that you love having an audience that's savvy, and the clients, the patients that you work with.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the beauty, I think. Understand what other doctors do, and also where there might be shortcomings, but not necessarily make that your expertise, but maybe just provide questions for them. And the reason I asked the question first, what kind of doctor were they? I'd love to have the conversation with that doctor. And I would open and invite that with any doctor that's telling me that my profession, the things that I do daily, might be dangerous. I've been doing this for 26, 27 years. And, we have a good record. Like, again, we haven't killed anyone that we've told anyone about. So
that's very true. Very enlightening, Bart. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure.
Shall we take a dive into stomach acid, Bart?
Yeah, let's dive in. I think this is maybe one of the most misdiagnosed and simultaneously misunderstood, because I think just the idea of the word stomach acid, we have a bad connotation that goes along with the word acid. So I think doing a little bit of deep dive here and flipping it over, because you might find out that helping your stomach acid get stronger might be the best thing they ever done.
It can be so counterintuitive if all we've ever heard is like stomach acid bad, put something in to make it go away.
Yeah, and the things that we typically will hear that associated with is like heartburn. And what's interesting is that we're going to talk about a bunch of things tonight, especially about having stomach acid and what role does it play in the body. We're going to get very specific into a couple of things that it does for our overall health and well-being. Yeah, it's very interchangeable. Some people might say, well, I have a lot of stomach acid, but they might also use the phrase, I have heartburn, or I have indigestion, or I have reflux, acid reflux. So all of those are a little bit interchangeable. They might be subtly different, but for the most part, those are all interchangeable. And more often than not, the remedy, if you have those, are to be given an antacid or something what we call a PPI. And at that point, that is when things get a little slippery. So I'll map it out really simple in the beginning here, and then we'll dive into it a little bit deeper. So our stomach, for the most part, should be very, very acidic, not alkaline, very, very acidic. So in theory, if I literally took a bite of my sneaker, which I wouldn't do, but if I did, and I was able to get it into my stomach, that stomach acid should be strong enough to break down that whatever goes into my stomach. So whatever goes in my mouth should be broken down by my stomach. And in order to do that, I need a very, very strong acid. Now, on occasion, what could happen is that we can decrease our stomach acid over time. So I want to get into the description of why we have things like acid reflux and heartburn and indigestion. I think if I can explain that good enough, we can dive into deep the benefits of having acid in our stomach. If we beat our guts up over time, and how do we beat up our guts? Medications, we can beat them up with processed foods, chemicals. Aging is a big contributor to lowering our stomach acid. And this is a big deal. So I think 50% of the people over age 65 are on some type of antacid or on some type of PPI that's places, and that's important. We'll get into that in just a moment, because when we get older, we need more protein in our lives, and we need this acid, or what's called hydrochloric acid. Anyways, let me go back to what's causing. So we get all these things in our body that are breaking down and weakening our hydrochloric acid. That's the acid that's supposed to be in our stomach. And there's this little valve at the top of our stomach. For those of you who are not looking, you just went up your rib cage where they came together, and there's kind of this spot that's called your xiphoid process right there. Right underneath that, essentially, there's a valve called your lower esophageal sphincter, the LES. That little sphincter, it closes up after we're done eating or while we're eating, so things don't leak up. If you don't have enough acid, it opens. So in order to keep that valve closed, you need strong acid. If your acid is getting weaker, that muscle is not triggered to stay closed, and it starts to open. Once it opens, things start to leak up. That is when we start to say things like, I have indigestion, I have acid reflux, I have heartburn, because things are starting to leak up into the esophagus and you can taste the acid. So that is predominantly where it starts. And that is why it's a little confusing, because we say, Doc, I can literally taste and feel the acid. It's burning my esophagus. I can taste it in my mouth. I have acid here. And we're not denying that. But the challenge is because you have too little or too weak of an acid, it is at that point that little sphincter, that little muscle doesn't close. So that the hydrochloric acid is actually the fuel, blows those muscles up. It kind of makes those muscles flex.
Do you find that this is pretty common, Bart, where you have people come in who've got that little like backflow?
Super common. In fact, probably 30 to 50 million Americans are on some type of medication on or off, which is huge, which is absolutely huge. So that's a huge number of people. And I'll explain why this is such a bad bad thing, because if that many people are taking acids or acid, PPIs and antacids, now all of a sudden we have 30 to 50 million people who are most likely going to have a series of other issues going on with their body. We can dive into those in just a moment here. But so the answer to your question is yes, I see it all the time. And most of the time, the go-to is taking an antacid. Now, the reason that it feels right is because you take the antacid and it shuts down your low production to lower production. And now you don't taste it anymore. Now you don't have the acid where it wasn't supposed to be. The problem, the root cause, was not your acid production. Well, it was your acid production. It wasn't enough. The root cause was that muscle wasn't closing. So we want to make sure that we get a healthy amount of this stomach acid called hydrochloric acid in our stomachs. Literally, that's just when our food drops down into the stomach, we should have hydrochloric acid there. And if we have the proper amount, then we can do some really good things here. So let me dive into this. There's really 4 things that a good stomach acid will provide for us. And as I mentioned these, kind of keep your mind and your eyes, kind of your eyes and ears open here, because they can be affecting so many things. And this is what we call upper GI. So sometimes your doctors talk about, that's your upper GI system or your lower GI. This is considered upper GI system. And the very, very first part of your digestive system, well, it's really your mouth, but then it's your stomach. So we'll dive into the first one. And the first thing that is really going to be impacted by your hydrochloric acid is your digestion. That's kind of a no-brainer, I know. When you think of digestion, this is what I want you to think of, that when you put food into your body, you're able to break it down. That sounds simple, but there are things that across the, as time goes, that I'm listening to as a provider, that I'm listening to people say, and I'm listening to find out, are these signs and symptoms that people are having low hydrochloric acid. So if I hear things like they're having more gas, they're having bloating, they're having reflux, how about this one? They are now no longer like the taste of red meat. Red meat, they're leaning away from red meat. And this is almost a telltale sign that you have a lower level of hydrochloric acid in your stomach. One of the reasons behind that is that it takes very, very strong acid. So red meat is very difficult to break down because it needs a strong acid. And like many things, those things that are really, really good for us are usually harder to break down. So that is a telltale sign. Here's a couple others that are very common, that you have low hydrochloric acid. And because of this symptom, we start to look at it kind of from the wrong lens. So both diarrhea and constipation are a sign that you have low hydrochloric acid. So the simple part of this, when I talk about number 1 here, so there's really 4 things that hydrochloric acid becomes very important for, but digestion is key. If you do not digest your foods properly and fully, and you don't break them all the way down, and they get to your small intestine and they're not broken down, then they get into your large intestine, that's one of the ways that we cause constipation. And a little known fact, but this is kind of where it gets a little wonky, but diarrhea is actually a form of constipation, and it's your body's last ditch effort to really try to flush everything out, but it can't get it out. So it's another sign that you're not breaking down or not digesting your food properly. And with this fundamentally, and we're going to get into in a moment here, just the impact that it has on hormones. But if you don't break your food down, guess what? You're going to stay hungry, because your body needs nutrients. It needs these vitamins, it needs minerals, it needs all the different things, it needs electrolytes. And if you can't break them down properly, you're not going to get them. Your cells, tissue, and organs don't get them. And your body will keep sending messages to say, I need more here.
So a nice fire of acid in our stomach, a good level of stomach acid is great for our digestion. That seems logical, but the part that's interesting to me is sometimes you can have diarrhea or constipation without the bellyache. And to track that back up to the stomach makes so much sense.
Yeah. And again, that's where it's a little bit overlooked. So often in clinic, if someone says, I have constipation, one of the very, very first things I give them, not even kind of often, it's what I always do, is because it tells me right away, you're not breaking your foods down on the top end. So for everyone out there right now, if you're chronically constipated, no, you're most likely not breaking down your food. So a digestive enzyme would be super supportive. I'll give you a little connection here, and this will help people see the importance of it. So We'll talk to men for a second. Then listen, you need hydrochloric acid to be able to break down zinc. And zinc is critically important for us for many reasons, but mostly because it's the primary mineral that we need for our prostate. So for every guy out there that is on an antacid, your pH, your acid in your stomach, your pH ends up going up. We'll talk about pH balance in just a moment here. And now you can't break down zinc. And if you can't break down zinc, you can't absorb. Comes back to digestion. You will not break down and absorb the number one most important mineral for your prostate. That's an issue for us. That's a not okay situation. So if you're on an antacid, you're on a proton pump inhibitor, these other things like Prilosec and Zantac, all of those different ones, those are going to inhibit our ability to absorb a mineral like zinc. And never mind the effects that zinc or the positive impact that it can have on the immune system. But for us men, it's massively important for our prostate. Now let's talk about women for a second. Ladies, just wouldn't keep it real simple. Many women out there are walking around iron deficient, and we keep thinking, oh, it's not enough red meat, or I got to take more iron pills. Listen, the number one way that women are deficient in iron is low hydrochloric acid. You need a strong acid in order to be able to break down and absorb iron. So those two right there are significant health issues across the board. So probably 90% of the listeners we have right now have either deficient in zinc or deficient in iron. So a little bit of hydrochloric acid go a long, long way when it just comes to our overall health.
The more I learn on this health path, the more I am shocked at how much relates to our gut. It doesn't end. There's so much there.
Yeah, there's so much truth to that. And here's the fun thing: you get your gut healthy, you get your gut health, strong. You really rehabilitate your gut, and then put an emphasis on nurturing it. Right? I know I didn't nurture mine for the first 40 years. If I could put something in my body, I did. Right? So, on the flip side, now there's very particular what's going to go into the system. But if we nurture the digestive system, we know there's a gut-brain connection there. We know that there's a gut hormone connection. There's so many things that stem off of the gut that if we take care of it, I think that most of us would be surprised at how well our bodies can really function even into our 50s, 60s, 70s plus.
And forever. I love it, Bart. So really good for our digestive system. And then what other systems? I think you mentioned there were 4 things that can really benefit from good stomach acid.
Yeah. So your immune system, this is lost. So we went a couple of years through, the boogly woogly thing, that pandemic thing, and we rarely talked about how important it is for us to have strong stomach acid. So when things came into our body killed them. So there's 3 things that enter our body on a regular basis that we should be privy to. And most of the time, your body's killing them off. But if we don't have enough hydrochloric acid, one of these 3 things, or all 3 of them, can escape and get through the body and enter via our mouth and through our stomach. And that's parasites, bacteria, and viruses. And lo and behold, our stomach acid is designed to kill off and does a phenomenal job when it's available, kills them all off.
I love to talk about parasites, bacteria, and viruses.
So the reality, so we can get all those from food. So even like things like E. coli. And the beauty is that our bodies were designed to defend ourselves against all of those things. Yet the key is that we have this hydrochloric acid. We have this vat of acid waiting for anything that's coming its way. And that's why when you asked me that question earlier, do we see a lot of people and is it important? Yeah. Think about it. If there's 30 to 50 million people right now taking antacids and they're making the pathway easier for the villains to get by, that's a problem.
I know I always think about this in the context of traveling when you're kind of at an unfamiliar place and you're eating unfamiliar things. And I know that the stronger my gut is, the better trip I'm going to have.
Yeah, precisely. And that's why when we talk about travel kits and whatnot, what to bring, the number one thing I always tell people, the very first thing that needs to be in your travel kit when in terms of, providing for your health is the digestive enzyme called Zypam. And that is a hydrochloric acid with a little bit of pepsin in there so you can break down your proteins, which is phenomenal. But also, most importantly, you're killing off, you're defending yourself. So that's a big part of it. So, the bummer here too, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past, that even things like mouthwash can lower and break down the saliva enzymes, which then weaken the stomach acid. So we got to be careful how we're manipulating that system. So yes, probably just bypass on your stomach, on your mouthwashes and whatnot. Yet a real important part of the immune system is the front part of our stomach. Just to back up real quickly here when it comes to digestion, deficiencies, nutrient deficiencies is one of the primary reasons we overeat. It leads to, often we think of blood sugar management and whatnot, and that's all true. But usually at the root cause of the overeating, and granted, it is related to blood sugars, usually it's as a result of having nutrient deficiencies. In the event that we have nutrient deficiencies, your body is going to continue to ask for more food because it doesn't have the tools it needs to keep up with you in your life.
So like, even if you're eating amazing things, they may not be giving them all the benefits still stick around.
Precisely. So that, for a lot of people out there that you have really good diets, you're doing better and better. You're doing better now than you've ever had in your life, but you may have more health challenges. It may be as simple as you're not breaking your food down properly. And you could be eating all the kale that you want and all the goji berries and all the cranberries and all the good stuff and all the grass-fed beefs, yet you're not breaking it down and digesting it in such a way that you can absorb those nutrients. So that is why something so simple as taking a digestive enzyme specifically, and I guess for our listeners, there's a lot of good ones out there. Hydrochloric acid, what they call HCl, is really what I'm talking about. I have a particular one we use in clinic. We use with a lot of our clients. The one I use myself is something called Zypan, and it's hydrochloric acid along with another enzyme that the body produces called pepsin.
And so hydrochloric acid, Bart, that is what our body produces naturally, and we can supplement it with extra. Is that right?
Correct. So our body does produce this naturally. It's produced in the parenchyma of the stomach. That just means it's produced in the stomach. Things get a little wonky though. So let's just say, for example, I'll give a good example of a deficiency that a lot of people have, and that's vitamin B12. If you don't have a low stomach acid, and I'll give a number to it, it needs to be below 3. If you don't have below 3 stomach acid, so that would be very acidic, and maybe people have heard about, being alkaline, maybe at 7.2 or 7.0, that would be more alkaline. So we want our stomach acid very, very low.
For like a pH scale, right?
Correct. Exactly. Yes. Yes. In the event that your stomach acid is above 3, you won't release what's called intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor is an enzyme that helps you absorb B12. So the reason so many people have deficiencies in B12 is because they don't have enough stomach acid to release intrinsic factor. So the whole sequence, very complex situation is taking place there. But if you've been diagnosed, you did blood work and you have low B12, the first thing you should be thinking is, do I have enough stomach acids? Is my stomach strong? And then of course, are the foods, where could I get my B12?
Because we usually start with just taking B12. Yeah.
Yes. And some people, we run a lot of labs. Some people will say, I take B12 all the time. I don't understand how it's low. You don't absorb it. Let me back up to that just a little bit, because there's some people out there who have a different issue with B12. They take their B12 and in their labs, it shows through the roof, super high. And most labs only go up to about 2,000 that they read it to, and then they just say it's greater than 2,000. So it doesn't read any higher. And if that is you, what that tells me is that you're not absorbing it. You have it in your bloodstream. Yes. So you're measuring, yes, you have a ton of B12 in your bloodstream. Good for you. Not so good, because it just tells me that you're recirculating it all and you're not absorbing any of it.
So good stomach acid is fantastic for digestion. We've got a little visit here with the pH balance. Amazing for the immune system, Bart.
Yeah. So number 1, digestion. Number 2, your immune system. Number 3, importance of hydrochloric acid would be that, or stomach acids, is that it balances your pH. Let's chat about pH for a moment. Sometimes this gets misunderstood as well. So there's body fluids pH, and so your stomach and your intestines, and that changes. So from your mouth, or really your stomach, as mentioned, maybe from 1.0 to about 3 would be fantastic levels. You get down a little bit lower to the small intestine, then it rises up. It might be in the 4s and 5s. Then it varies a little bit, goes up to mid 5s, and it goes back down. So that gives you an idea that for the most part, your intestinal system is very acidic or not alkaline. And we have to be careful always trying to just alkalize things. So there are certain things like our blood, very alkaline, was 7.2, 7.1, 7.2. And listen, if it went to 7.4 or went to 6.8, it'd be dead. Like that just shows you that we can't change the pH in our blood because it's kind of a built-in system. All right. That being said, we'll back up a little bit. The reason that this pH and why stomach acids or HCl is so important is that if the pH gets too high and it becomes too alkaline, then it becomes very inviting for things like mold, for fungus, for candida, for bacteria, for yeast. So if you've ever been diagnosed with any of those, know that you are too alkaline and not acidic enough. So all the protocols that the men and women like myself who are doing functional nutrition and doing functional medicine, we're always trying to acidify the system so we can get rid of fungus and mold and bacteria and candidas and yeast. With even urinary tract infections, really at the root of that is it's too alkaline in the environment. And if it's too alkaline in the environment, bacteria can grow, yeast can grow.
It's literally all in the gut, Bart.
Yes. Yeah. So all of this, and what's fascinating about it is so much of this, again, these are just digestive enzymes. These are just a couple little pills that you would take, a couple of vitamins that you would take prior to your meals. So essentially you take you have a little bit of extra hydrochloric acid in your stomach, and therefore whatever comes in next, you're going to have the ability to break it down, to make it utilizable for the rest of your body to absorb those nutrients so we don't have nutrient deficiencies. And in the event that there is a bacteria, there's always a possibility of that hanging out on our kale or on our spinach, right? Or on food that's been sitting in the back of the kitchen. If there's parasites, which there's always a likelihood, the good news is that our body has the tools to break it down and kill it off.
Anything to get our body stronger, Bart, harder to kill. It's awesome.
That's right. That's right.
So did you mention something about hormone regulation as well?
Yeah. So this this deserves at least a little bit of mention here. So hydrochloric acid, stomach acids also play a role in hormone regulation, but really not the hormones when we think of testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. It will participate in having impact on those depending on what you can or cannot absorb. That's true. But really, there's two other hormones, the hormones of hunger and satiety, and those are ghrelin and leptin. So this is very interesting. So ghrelin, I'll try to make this as simple as can be. So ghrelin is a hormone that your body releases. It's made in the stomach. I believe so. Ghrelin is made as a hormone made in the stomach, and it basically tells us we're hungry. So the more that ghrelin is in the stomach, it says we're hungry. So when we eat and we get a full stomach, in theory, at that point, when it's full, body goes, nope, got enough ghrelin. And when we start to just break down our food, here's the key. If you break down your food, the ghrelin goes away. If we don't break the food down, the body keeps signaling and says, oh, we're hungry, even though you've just eaten. So I want everyone to think about this situation for how many times you've gone out to eat, you've had a huge meal, monster meal. Maybe you went out, you had pasta and bread and you had a steak and dessert and everything. You get home and you're still hungry. And often that is because you simply haven't broken down your foods. You haven't digested your food. And as a result of it, you still have this hormone in your body called ghrelin kicking off. And it's saying, I haven't got what I needed yet. The flip side of that, there's another hormone called leptin. Leptin basically is, I had enough. Your satiety. That means that you're satiated. And this hormone is kind of the opposite of it. So in order for us to have leptin released, we have to make sure that ghrelin is bye-bye. So if your food is not digested, ghrelin's going to stick around and we never become satiated. So recently we ran a carnivore challenge. And one of the things that I kind of had as a soft requirement was that everyone used digestive enzymes, partially because I knew that red meat and meat in general is harder to break down than the carbohydrates are. We're taking the carbs away and making everyone eat meat. But for the most part, everyone's taking their digestive enzymes, Zypan, and they're eating a lot more meat, which a lot of people think that would block them up. But what we found was the contrary. One, they became much more satiated because they were breaking down their foods better. So you don't just have to take digestive enzymes when you're eating meat, because it would benefit us there's a lot of different enzymes to take, and they benefit across the board just having more stomach acid. But we found that people were more satiated because they were absorbing nutrients more. And that is a big key out there. So there's a big challenge right now across the board in our country, that the reason we need more and more food is because we've become weaker and weaker digesting our food and absorbing the nutrients.
Is there also something innate in the body that tunes into like how much acid we've used per meal?
That we've used per meal?
Yeah, like does the body pay attention to like, we've like finished lunch. Okay, that took like so much acid to digest that. So like we don't need to eat for a little while. I just wonder if the body itself gives you like feedback to be full.
Well, that's what leptin does. That is the hormone leptin. So leptin, that's exactly how it responds. You get a certain amount of food, and if you're absorbing those nutrients, the body goes, "Oh, got everything I need today. Stop sending me any." And that's the simple part of it. So we have these two hormones that if you have good amount of acid, that's exactly what they're going to do. If the stomach's empty, it says, "Feed me." When it gets full, it breaks down the food, and then you kick in your leptin. If we don't have the stomach acid, that leptin never gets turned on because it never receives as much as it needs. So it's always sending a message. And the challenge is so leptin also plays a big role in letting our body know that we have the tools for energy. This is where it gets a little bit deeper, but I think people understand this. So leptin tells us we have enough, and to kick in the cycle, the motor, things like our mitochondria, you have the fuel, go to work, you have all the energy you need. When leptin doesn't get kicked in, your body goes, "We don't have energy. We haven't kicked it in. Leptin isn't here." So you still have this appetite going on. So now you need energy because you're getting tired. So you move more toward your carbs and sugar. Now, everything we've talked about, nutrient deficiencies, prostate issues, iron deficiencies, a little bit of all of it, gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, candida, yeast, parasites. Believe it or not, all of these can be reduced, inhibited, and maybe even vanished by simply making sure your stomach acids are good.
Art, is it as easy as just adding some extra hydrochloric acid to your diet?
That's what's cool. The answer is yes. Yeah.
Did you start today?
You certainly could start today. So if you came to our house here and at the farm, we have a bottle of Zypan sitting on our kitchen table or in our table in our kitchen. And that's just a reminder for us because we're going to use this all the time. And if I travel, you bet that's what we're going to use, because there's other inhibitors. When we're stressed, we inhibit the acid production. So if we go back to what happens, well, why wouldn't my acid be good? I'm a pretty healthy individual. Stress inhibits it over long-term, medications, drugs, and age. Unfortunately, as we age, and I don't think it is particularly I don't think there's a number. There's kind of numbers, 40 years, basically at 40 years old, we see a significant decline in hydrochloric acid production. And so we get to that spot. And again, I don't think it's age. I think it's lifestyle for all of us. We beat our bodies up. We eat as much pizza as we possibly can, right? We're having ice cream, pizza and ice cream and whatnot. So we're just plowing all these processed foods and sugars into our body. We weaken our stomach acid. We don't sleep properly. We have a hard time restoring. We're having more and more nutrient deficiencies. So we snack more carbohydrates, sugar. So we just kind of get completely out of whack. And then hopefully we wake up with an aha moment sometime early enough where we can still make changes and go, maybe I need to sharpen things up, get a little bit better here. And the beauty is, if you just started here, it would be significant for your health. And again, I think the statistic right now is 50% of people over 65 are on some type of acid blocker, proton pump inhibitor, antacid. And this is a bummer. Especially clinically, when I think about what people 65 and older need more than anything, they need essential amino acids. They need protein. They need the ability to break down protein. And if you're on an antacid, it's very, very difficult for your body to break down proteins. I also think this is why meats in general get a bad rap. We have millions of people that are on these antacids. And then they go into their doctors, and not only do they have acid reflux, which acid reflux and heartburn and indigestion is the precursor to the higher cholesterols and the blood pressure changes. And then they go to their doctor and they say, "Well, what do you eat?" And they say, "Well, I eat red meat." Neither one of them are connecting the fact they can't digest the red meat. So, well, it can't be good for you. And it's creating all these other issues. You probably should just get off red meat.
As someone who loves burgers and steak as much as you do, Bart, that would be such a bummer.
Yes, and this for me for years. This is one of the fascinating kind of discoveries I had for my own health, that my stomach acid was beat. Like, I was one of those individuals that leaned away from red meat. I loved the taste of it, but every time I ate it, it made me feel massively full and uncomfortable. So if you have those symptoms, that just basically tells you you're not breaking your food down. So if you eat food and your upper GI system is kind of bloated and you feel full and it's really heavy, you're not breaking your food down.
So when you were rehabbing your gut, Bart, in addition to adding in some hydrochloric acid like Zypan, were there other things that you brought into your diet?
Yeah, for tonight, there's a lot of things. So I'll give you some foods that would be very effective. So we've heard all the benefits of things like apple cider vinegar, right? Essentially, this.
And we think that's very acidic, right?
Yes, very, very acidic. The exact same intention there. We're super acidifying the gut. And what do they say with that? Take it every single day and it can start to, and it's yucky. I'm telling you, taking a couple little tablets of Zypan is a lot more comfortable. And if you're doing both, wonderful. Yeah. And there's other things too, Whit. So if you're just trying to lean yourself into being a better digester of foods, you can just start to pick bitter foods. And this was my journey. So most people across the board, I'd say bitter is probably the least enjoyed food that is out there right now. And it might very well be the most important based on what we've recognized from science, how bitter foods wake up more digestive receptors, more receptors on the cell than any other food that we can possibly eat. That's saying a lot. So it's saying a lot in the sense that how important bitters are. And if you look traditionally, whether it be Ayurvedic medicine or in Chinese medicine, you always see the use of bitters. Whether it be a ginger or echinacea, you always see the use of herbs helping the digestive system. So if you want to just start to support yourself nutritionally, the foods you can just lean into, bitter foods. It could be a little bit of arugula, it could be some kale, it could be some ginger. The way that I did it way back in the days, I liked my carbs. I'd eat them pretty healthy ones, but I loved them. So if there's rice and potatoes, I would do those types of things. And I would do a shot of ginger every single day when I was living up in Atlanta. And now we have our own cafe, so I can do it. In fact, I have one waiting in my fridge right now for me.
Those ginger shots are powerful, Bart.
It's like fire. And here's what I would say, and there's no scientific research, but this is my clinical research and my personal research. When you get really used to having bitters, when you do those shots of ginger, it's not that bad. When you are on the other end of the spectrum and you're starting to move towards sweetness and you're getting your sweet tooth back and you're redeveloping all your sweet, then comes salty, then comes sour, then comes bitters. When you're way on that other side of the pendulum and you're a sweet tooth and you don't even know it yet, go do a shot of ginger. If it tastes like hell, if it tastes like fire water, like, oh my God, that should be illegal, I will never do that again. You've got a sweet tooth and your bitter receptors are weak. They're probably non-existent because they had nowhere to go.
So in that case, Zypan would have helped soothe that a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt. Developing those receptors again and increasing your body's hydrochloric acid, which essentially then helps balance out your pH. So I love that. And that'd be a little challenge to everyone. Go by your local cafe or your juice bar, get a shot of ginger and do it. If you've never done one, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm looking forward to mine downstairs because it's so cleansing as well. It just literally cleans the palate, cleans everything out. If there was anything around there, it's going to get killed.
It's so energizing too. Bart, if people wanted to take a deep dive, kind of one-on-one with guidance for this and like other health topics, would you be able to help them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love doing that. It's one of my favorite things I get to do every single week. So if anyone wants to work with me one-on-one, certainly can do it. And we can do it virtual, which is kind of cool, just like this. So they would just reach out to the office, let them know you want to schedule a virtual appointment. And at the same time, if we need labs, we can do that. We can run any type of labs, including the, some of the standards for the gold standards for functional medicine, like organic acid tests. I mentioned that a couple of times here. And the reason I'm bringing that up tonight is that's where we'll see things like funguses and molds and bacteria and candidas and let us know how your mitochondria function, our neurotransmitters. So there's a lot that test can do. It's a urine test. You take it at home, very simple, but very, very powerful and very, very effective test. If you're literally trying to get a good perspective of how your body is functioning from the inside out. And then, of course, labs as well, hormones, all that good stuff. They can do that as well.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us this evening for the Health Made Simple show.
Yes. And thank you, everyone, for showing up once again. Keep doing the thing. Keep sharing it out. Keep spreading love. And, of course, continue to take deliberate action for your mind, your body, your overall wellness. Be awesome.